Yeah. I think you'll want it in it.
And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Township of Douro-Dummer at our regular council meeting here on the 19th of October, 2021. I remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded and is being presented live on the Township's YouTube channel. So welcome, everyone, on a beautiful fall day. I'd like now to call the roll for members of council. If you could raise your hand to signify your presence. Deputy Mayor Moher.
Here.
Councillor Watt.
Present.
Councillor Landsman. And Councillor Watson.
I'm here also.
He is here. Thank you very much. With all of council in attendance, I will officially call the meeting to order. And we respectfully acknowledge that we're on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga and Anishinaabe, and we offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and their teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And before we do get underway, too, I would like to send out our condolences and our deepest sympathies to Deputy Mayor Carl Moher on the recent passing of his wife, Leona. Carl, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Please, everyone, join us for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you very much. We'll continue indeed with our meeting. Some of our staff, and I did not introduce them for the benefit of everyone to know who's who. With us also is Alana Arthur, is our CAO. Alana, a little wave from you. Martina Jade Hartwig, our clerk. There she is, Martina. Brian Fawcett, our chief building official, is with us. And Paul Creamer, our interim treasurer. Paul, it's great to have you here as well. Okay, I've taken the liberty to change the agenda somewhat. I am moving item 12.1, which is a letter from Marie Howran regarding the vaccination policy. I'm going to move that up to before item 9.4, which is our discussion and about the new policy that is being proposed. So with that in mind, I would entertain a motion, please, to adopt that slightly amended agenda. Councillor Watson and Deputy Mayor Moher. All in favor? Thank you very much. Item 6, we have 3 meetings, and the minutes are before you. A motion, please, to approve and adopt those minutes of September 28, October 5, and 2 meetings, October 5th. And a motion from Mr. Watt, seconded by Councillor Landsman. All in favor? All in favor? That motion is approved. Any business arising out of those minutes? Okay, moving along. Now we're at delegations, petitions, presentations, and the 2 good-looking guys on the screen, Bruce and Jeff from Birchcliff Property Owners Association. They have a 10-minute delegation, and gentlemen, you're always welcome here at Douro-Dummer, and I would ask you to adhere to our 10-minute delegation time. You'll hear a little bing when 10 minutes is up, and you can wrap up. Okay, so we'll turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
I assume you can hear me? Turn yours off.
Yep, we're good to go.
Okay, great. Well, first of all,
thanks for receiving Jeff and I, so our deepest thanks to Mr. Mayor, our council members in attendance, and any staff members. So we'll move on. So to our first slide here. We've been here many times before. Myself and Jeff, on numerous occasions, we have spoken on this subject regarding road safety on Birchview Road. Most recently at the AGM, we provided photos in the past, and we've provided more photos going forward. And throughout this year, there's been a lot of conversations and expressions of concern from the various homeowners, and for that matter, anybody on the road, including construction workers. So basically, I've noticed that there has been improvement. So I thank everyone at Douro-Dummer and staff for the work that has been done. We've noticed an improvement in the regular maintenance and the frequency of it, and repairs to the road, etc., and the cutting. But there's still a long way to go, and that's what we're here to talk to you about, further improvements on the go forward basis. Next slide. Okay, so the world is changing, people. I'm sure you're well aware of that. If you look at with COVID, the amount of change that's occurring both in urban and rural areas is quite dramatic. We've noticed an increase in traffic, the usage of the roads, vehicles, all types of vehicles, cyclists, and huge amount of parked vehicles, especially construction. I'm sure you noted with all the increase in permits that are being applied for. And the other interesting increase is the increase in through traffic. We're noticing more 18-wheelers that are, I guess, Waze or Google are directing that they're coming through Young's Point. They want to get somewhere down on the 6 towards Halls Glen or Wildfire. It's directing them through Birchview.
Yeah,
Okay, it takes a while to cycle. So throughout this summer in particular, with the amount of people, what homeowners have to say? Well, they're all expressing concern about the condition of the road and the safety and the traffic. We have got a great deal amount of support from our members and non-members. We now have contacted just about everyone we could find on the road. It's interesting how many homeowners we had difficulty contacting, but we do have a vast majority of the homeowners are supporting us in terms of getting on with improving the road. The number one comment, at least that I have received, is why is Douro-Dummer done so little? And so the actual temperature on the road in regards to road safety is certainly increased. And one other interesting comment I want to share with you is that homeowners have expressed a willingness to improve. Recommended phase implementation. So what I'd like to get into recommendations, I know it's quite a bit of work, but we look at short-term, medium-term, long-term. And short-term is like right now, once the leaves have left the foliage, then certainly in 21, the rest of this year, there's things that we can do, such as trimming of the trees and grass. Speed reduction, speed surveillance. By the way, your sister county, Kawartha Lakes, has in the past moved from 60 to 50, and most recently, within the last 2 or 3 weeks, they've come out and 40 plus communities in Kawartha Lakes, they're reducing the speed limit to 40. So you got a neighbor who is quite progressive. I was surprised to see that, and we're certainly interested, certainly in the short term. It's not a huge cost item to take a look at the speed. Also, the signing hazards on the roads. The Peterborough Bike Association, they love to come up here 80 at a time, 2 abreast, 3 abreast. There could be some signing saying signal file only. improvement siding at the signs, et cetera. So there's a great deal amount of work that could be done short term. Next slide. Medium term. Well, medium term is, I know you're getting into budget time, and I much appreciate that the AGM give kudos to Dr. McGregor in getting additional study work done. And we talked about our participation in the budgeting process at the AGM. So medium term is what can we do next year? Well, certainly we can do road improvements, improve the hard top, start to deal with some of the blind spots that need to be addressed. And long term, it is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the surface of Birchview is due to be redone. I think it was in your plan. And that's an excellent opportunity to take advantage of the heavy equipment where we can get in there and make further improvements to the shoulders, to the blind spots, and anything that we could do that would be more suited for heavier grading work when the equipment is here. So we can continue to improve the shoulders and the overall maintenance of Birchview Road. Okay, so what I'd like to do here is I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, because he was the architect around supplying all the information that we have submitted to Douro-Dummer, and so he'll comment on this particular slide.
You got about 3.5 minutes left, Jeff.
By the way, Jeff's beside me.
We're doing a tag team here. So I provided council and staff with access to a Google Drive where we'd put a bunch of documents, including around 60 photographs of the type of thing we're seeing on a daily basis here. And Dr. McGregor's presentation from a few weeks back gave pictures that she's found when she was doing preparing that. So you see the type of issue we've got. Even today, Bruce was helping me take a boat out, and he had a bit of a start up near McCracken's where there were construction vehicles parked on the road, and he met somebody else in another truck coming in the other direction with no room. So, and that was just this morning. So when you look at all the stuff that's on the Google Drive, all the photographs have the locations of the photo. We also did a door-to-door survey, which we provided you with. And that has, I was checking it again last night. We've got something like, I don't know, 120, 130 names on that. And then in addition, we've also got a online survey, which was up to 64 in numbers today of people responding. So we've got well over 50%, actually over 60% of the properties that are on Birchview or feeding into Birchview, starting down at the corner near Fiddler's.
Both of them members.
And it includes members of BPOA and non-members, and there's probably more non-members that have signed that than members. So it gives you an idea of how important this issue is, and it's about pedestrian safety. We have people pushing baby carriages. You can see that in the comments on the online survey. We have people pushing family members in wheelchairs. We have kids on bicycles. We have people walking and running, as well as the cycling crowd that's using the road. And we have constant conflicts with what's going on. And so we also provided you with access to some estimates we had prepared by Thomas Took. And he was very helpful in doing that. And we just picked 3 particular locations. And as Bruce said, in 2023, some of those real problem locations may be an opportunity for you to fix some shoulders. And so shoulders, someplace where people can get off the traveled portion of the road when they've got two-way traffic going by them. And our focus is on pedestrians and cycling safety here. Personally, I couldn't care less about a car. And it doesn't matter whether you got a little Chevette or whether you got a Porsche 911, you can speed on this road. And the concern we have is for pedestrians and the people that live here. And we want to make sure that council and staff and your review is focusing on that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Phone going on.
Yeah. Okay. Something I wanted to add. We identified, before we go to questions, and that'll be it for us. There are 60 odd locations that we've identified by address. So Jeff and I went out, and Birchview's 12 kilometers long.
You know,
We know it's an expensive item. The work that we think needs to get done really only constitute maximum, and that's a high number, I think, is no more than 2 kilometers out of the 12. Okay, there's these individual pockets of area blind spots that need to be addressed. Okay, and certainly an important one is the speed. If you look at the signs at McCracken and Camp Line, you can see the 50s. And when you're coming down McCracken, you turn the corner to hit Birchview. Hallelujah! I can speed. Goes up to 60. You know, so certainly on our
Short-term list is, let's get the reduction. Let's follow Kawartha Lake's lead, and we should be the lead dog, but in this particular case, we're not. So
Okay.
having a strategy long-term around Birchview, okay, including a work plan. And I'm looking forward to providing input to DM Wills, who's going to be doing a short-term road assessment, and looking at the language has the connotation of how do we support cars? Well, it's not cars, it's people, it's cyclists, it's ladies pushing carriages. The demographics of the road is changing dramatically, so we need to get on with it.
I personally
I think we're going to.
Until I am fully satisfied, and I'll be addressing this item as many times as I have to, but I hope it's not necessary.
Okay,
Any
good.
questions?
Let's get some time here for members of council to ask any questions. What I am going to do is turn it over to Alana, our CAO. I certainly take exception to some statement that I saw about how we've done nothing. It seems to me we've spent probably more on Birchview Road in the last number of years than any other road in the township. So I take a bit of exception to that. Alana, maybe you can give us an overview of how things stand now on this whole project with Jake and everything else. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Mayor.
let's-
Just following up from the original delegation that was provided, there has been some work already done from our Public Works Department. So they have gone and installed stop signs at all the private road intersections. They have brushed around the signage where we saw areas that signage was covered. They've done some additional roadside grass mowing. I know in the presentation they identified some of those areas where there has been additional work, as well as patching the shoulders and the roadways. So I know coming forward in 2022 that Jake has budgeted for complete brushing of the entire roadway from start to finish. So that will be coming forward for council's decision during our budget process. With regards to the road risk assessment that's being conducted by DM Wells, council approved us moving forward with that at a previous meeting. And they did provide us just with some oversight on what they're going to look at. So what they had indicated was that they will be looking at certain characteristics of the road, including the horizontal alignment, the vertical alignment, the average lane width, the roadside hazards, the pavement surface, the number of intersections with public roads, number of intersections with private access driveways, number of interchanges, and the on-street parking. So we're hoping that we will get a fulsome report back so that we can bring something back to council at that time and give you some additional information on how we're going to move forward with any of those changes. We're also working to provide council with a fulsome report following up from Dr. McGregor's delegation, where we're going to give you some additional information on how we might handle the parking issues. And in addition, we can talk about speeding at that time. I have encouraged anybody that has emailed, if there are parking issues, please contact the OPP. Putting up no parking signs, we don't have the enforcement capability. So prior to being able to get that in place, we don't want to put up signs and create a situation where there is no enforcement. And then when we do have the opportunity to enforce, that opportunity is now kind of diluted because we've gone ahead and jumped the gun. So please give us the time to continue to try to find a solution for that. And in the meantime, we'll continue to do the other assessments and areas where we can improve. And then we'll come forward to council following that risk assessment to determine if there's larger dollars that need to be spent. Just with regards, we did have our finance department take a look at the money that had been spent on Birchview. So we're looking at almost $1 million in the last 15 years. So back in 2007, 2008, there was almost or just over 700,000. And again, in 2013, an additional almost 300,000. So there has been some considerable money put into this roadway for sure. And that's, I guess based on the last 15 years.
Okay, thank you, Alana. Questions from members of council? I mean, we want, look, we want all our roads to be safe. Of course we do. Those transport trucks that Bruce, you talked about, well, they leave your road and they go by my house, believe me, every day, and I don't know why they're here. So this goes on everywhere. Okay, members of council, any questions or comments? Go ahead, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Bruce and Jeffrey. I just, a couple things. The bikes, I used to be a biker, bicycle that was. And don't you still have to go a single lane on traffic lanes? Is that still not the rules? I know they go 2 or 3 abreast, but that's to keep, get a wind tunnel going. But I believe it's still the law that, and I guess if they're abusing that, they should be reported to the Interior Provincial Police as well. The second comment, I think, there's an echo here. The second comment I would be, Bruce, and Jeffrey, when we get into the tree trimming, can you send something out to your people to say, back off on the emails to councillors? I remember last time we did this, I think I received 30 in one day. Every one of them were cut and paste. Most of them were from, from people that, and they were from companies. They were, I think there was one major bank from a bank website that I was surprised that the Royal Bank of Canada would have such a strong stand in such a local issue. Maybe we don't like what we see, but it is a safety issue. We got to get the sun in there to melt the ice, and the way to get that is to get the trees out of there that are close to the road and make it more safe. And that's my only comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
If I could respond to that.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Keep in mind that when you brush down the sides of the road, what happens to traffic? Traffic speeds up. So if you're going to do this, you've got to think about the speed limit that we've got on the road too, and enforcement of it. We warned you about that 13 years ago, 15 years ago, when you were doing the improvements and resurfacing the road. And that's exactly what happened. So, and we've been dealing with this issue. We've been dealing with this, I think, for in excess of 20 years. Speeding is always a top issue with people at our AGM. And it's obviously a top issue with people these days.
And it's on every road in our township.
Yeah, you look at County Road, I can't remember the number of it, like the old Youngs Point Road, there's an extensive length of that county road that's at 50 kilometers an hour. The old Selwyn Road coming up from Bridgenorth to Selwyn, there's an extensive length of that's been posted at 50 kilometers an hour. And those are wide roads. They've got surface lines, they've got wide shoulders, but they've got 50 kilometer speed limits because of the number of driveways and the number of people living along them. So I was
on a road today in our township with a 50 kilometer speed limit, and somebody passed me doing about 120. So it's not all about the township not having the resources. It's about idiot drivers out there, Jeff. And you know darn well that is the big change these days.
Yes, I know. And there's not going to stop that unless there's enforcement of the speed limit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't have to hire our own police department to do that.
Well, and again, even on the parking issue. If you got people parking on blind hills like we've seen constantly here with construction trucks, if you're not signing it, no parking in this vicinity, how can the OPP enforce anything if they're getting called about parking on the road? I mean, you can control where people can park.
Okay, well, we have a lot of work to do on Birchview Road, and in fact, all our roads. Budget time is coming up. Members of council are going to have to make some decisions. I'm hearing an echo. Someone must have maybe a speaker on too loud in the background or something. That's been since we started. But anyway, okay, I'm going to open it up. Any other members of council before I ask for a motion? We hear you. We've got it. It's budget time. We've got to decide a lot of things. Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. And thank you to gentlemen, to the two of you, and to Mr. Took. I know he's put a considerable amount of effort and time into this, as well as other members of the BPOA and residents along Birchview individually. I do just have a couple of questions, kind of pulling out a couple of points that were raised in the presentation. Alana, I guess I'm going to direct this at you because I don't see Jake is on the call. Do we know at this point if it is 2023 that Birchview is tentatively scheduled for resurfacing? Is that in the roads needs study that's being updated currently?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Watson, it is scheduled for 2023, and we'll look forward to the roads needs study that's coming forward to see if there's any modification to that, as well as the risk assessment that's being provided.
Fantastic, thank you. And then one last question to our delegation. I know that there were the files shared in Google Drive, and thank you, Jeffrey, for compiling that information. The actual survey or petition, has that been or will that be formally submitted to the clerk?
It was dropped off to the clerk's office. What was it, last Thursday, I think?
Last week, yeah.
Last week.
Yeah.
I just made a copy of it, and I was covering up everybody's email address so that we weren't circulating 100.
We need to officially receive that petition. That's all.
Yeah.
Just for the books. Yeah.
And the online one, we gave you a copy of the dump of the numbers from that the other day. That's gone up now. I think it was 55 the other day on the thing we provided you with. It's up to 64 as of today.
Martina?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the information regarding the petition signatures, handwritten and digital, was in the information packet. I think perhaps we didn't label them clearly enough, so I apologize for that.
Yeah. We can have a motion to officially receive that. Go ahead, Sheila. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. That was a good presentation, and I did receive and read all the Google documents. But I also think that our Public Works Department is doing what they can and getting on it. And as the mayor says, we do have many roads, but we do want to see and do the best we can for all our roads. But I think it's good that you've noted that some of the improvements have started.
Okay, thank you very much. I would entertain a motion then. Another comment, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick one. I appreciate it. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and actually the cost estimates and stuff I got would be very, very welcome, I'm sure, by DM Wells, because that does a lot of their legwork. And I mean, not that they're not going to double check and maybe tweak some of them, but I do appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Okay, then I think we'll have a motion to receive the delegation with thanks and to officially receive the petition. For the record, it'll be in the books. Sheila will make that, and Heather will be the seconder. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Okay, we're going to keep motoring on. We hear you guys. We hear you. In a perfect world, we'd push a button and make it all happen tomorrow. But we're on it. Budget time will be here, and we got to try to make all of our roads safe, including yours. Okay, thank you very much. We will move on here now. Other business and staff reports. Brian, he is with us, and this is item 9.1, a reciprocal service agreement with the building department. Some common sense coming out here. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. So after completing our service delivery review, one of the items that was recommended in that report was to look at a reciprocal services agreement. And so the purpose of that is basically that under the Building Code Act, the CBO is regulated to perform certain statutory duties, and only the CBO can perform those duties. So if I was to be absent, sick, unavailable, or potentially in a conflict of interest with something, then there's nobody else to perform that statutory duty. So what we have here before you today is a reciprocal services agreement. The Township of Havelock is in the same situation. They do have we both are in the same similar situation where we have CBOs and one inspector each. So this agreement just is a reciprocal agreement. So they're going to be passing the same type of agreement, which will allow for our CBOs duties to overlap on an as needed basis. It's not intended to be used regularly. It's just sort of a backup plan if we need something in a pinch. So.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Carl, go ahead.
I move the recommendation, and I got a comment.
Okay, seconder. Tom, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, just I guess there's a question I had. I believe we had similar arrangement with Otonabee, South Monaghan, and possibly North Kawartha, and yet it looks like I read somewhere in here that it looks like it's never been. Were those agreements informal or?
Through your worship, they not to say they're informal. What was actually was that the former CBO of this township and the former CBO of OSM Township were good colleagues with each other, and so they did have a reciprocal agreement. But each of those two were actually inspectors for the opposite municipalities. So when one was absent on vacation or whatever, the other one would fill in. But this is a more formal way of recognizing that type of arrangement. So
good, thank you.
Okay, motion is on the floor to approve that recommendation. All in favor? That motion is approved. Animal control bylaw. Brian.
Thank you. So as you remember, last December, January, we went through the animal control bylaw. We ended up pulling it back to just be the bare necessities of a dog, responsible dog ownership bylaw. And with that final direction, when we passed that bylaw, was to come back to council in the future with a comprehensive animal control bylaw after having some more public delegations and things like that. So we've had some time now to discuss with some of the affected parties, as well as upper levels of government. And we have what I believe is a much more agreeable draft of that bylaw. And so we're going to be finalizing that draft. And then the hope is that we can get it on the website for the start of November, have a public meeting for the second council meeting in November, which would be the 16th. And then receive comments from the public and council at that time, and if necessary, return with an amended bylaw or draft edits for the first meeting in December.
Brian, maybe I missed it, but is this including the little situation we went through with the muzzle committee? Do you remember the courtroom drama we had to do a couple of times?
Yeah, so the responsible dog ownership bylaw, we would be repealing that bylaw and passing this new comprehensive animal control bylaw. But the language of the dog bylaw is not intended to be changed in any way. So what we're hoping to do with this draft that we're going to post on the website is basically highlight the sections that are being changed or being added, I guess, and not really, I don't really intend to open the debate on the dog bylaw, because I think everyone's already come to a consensus that, and that bylaw has been working well for us and the Humane Society. So,
okay, thanks, Brian. Questions or comments from council? Carl and then Heather.
I think one of the things that came up after having 2 or 3 hearings was that we look at fees for appeals. Will that be part of that bylaw?
I might defer to Martina if that's all right. You give me a nod, Martina, if that's okay. Okay, yeah, Martina did a bit more research on the fees for that we are able to charge for the muzzle orders appeals.
Thank you.
Martina?
Great. So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have been investigating any type of fee we can charge for the appeal process. We have only found, I believe it's one other community who is charging fees, and they have it publicly posted on their website. So that's how we were able to track it down. And I believe they're charging in the range of $150. We are concerned that, and as part of our, our research and our continued discussion with the public as well, we are a little concerned that if we charge a fee that tries to come to a cost recovery number, we will be dissuading people or blocking people from accessing the appeal process. So we do have to be cognizant that we need to provide people an access for justice because it is like a judicial matter that is being considered, but we also want to have a fee that is reasonable, if we have a fee at all, that stops nuisance complaints. So we have to find that fine balance and make sure we're taking everyone's financial abilities and abilities to access justice into account when we make this type of decision and provide you a recommendation. So.
Okay, thank you, Martina. Carl, one more.
Just further to that, I would think $150 would be quite minimal when you consider the staff research and council time because I know at least one of those hearings was a complete waste of time, in my opinion. And I guess we're trying to discourage wasted time when we are so busy with our day-to-day. But I'll wait for the report to come back.
Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Fawcett. I'm a little concerned about the timeline, to be honest, for feedback. I understand, of course, you're wanting to get feedback from hunting associations, as well as I recall a group that represented sporting dogs or sporting dog owners, breeders, came to us at the time. And the public meeting is November 16th, which is, as many of us know, right after the second week of deer hunt, but also, really part of the overall hunting season. So can you speak a little bit about your timeline choice and perhaps, have you considered having a bit longer of a public input period?
Yeah, so we've been in contact with the Ontario Sporting Dog Association president prior to coming up with this timeline, and that's sort of the draft timeline is to respect the hunting associations that they're going to be gathering really heavily for the first 2 weeks of November, and then hopefully if they do have comment, then we can receive it on the 16th after the rifle season is over. If there is a lot of comment, I have no issues with extending that timeline further beyond. It's just, I think we need to pick some dates to give an idea of what we're proposing. And we have been discussing with all the relevant parties this bylaw for the last year. So there's been some informal public consultations already done, and we've been making amendments and changes to the draft with that correspondence. As well as like correspondence from OMAFRA, as well as from the Provincial Animal Welfare Services and things like that. So we've had a lot of background conversations, and which is why I think it's good time to get that posted, have a couple of weeks for everybody to look at it, and then if anybody wants to speak at the meeting, they can, and then we'll go from there.
We can extend it too if we choose to. One more, Heather.
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate what you're suggesting, and certainly during that time is a time when folks are gathering and perhaps would share ideas and comments around it. But in terms of registering or participating in that public meeting on I've got my 2022 calendar up, the 16th, I'm assuming is a Tuesday. In theory, they would have to have comment submissions sent to us by the Tuesday, November 8th. in order to be considered part of that agenda potentially, unless I guess during the public meeting they're able to bring in comments from the floor. So again, I'm just a little concerned to make sure that we do get a full spectrum of input from those folks in that part of the community, since they were largely one of the groups impacted by what we were proposing originally.
Brian, are you comfortable with the timeline? You're the one who's been digging into this with the people who are involved.
Yeah, I think through your worship, to mirror Councillor Watson's comments, I think the main commenting agency last time was the Ontario Sport Dog Association, and I've had a few conversations with their president. So he's very comfortable with our approach in terms of this, and I do understand that obviously the challenges with virtual meetings, that majority of those comments would have to be in, fairly earlier than in a standard, you can't just walk through the doors and speak your piece at that. But I know we can make accommodations to have the last minute people attached to the meeting if needed. And maybe we'll see, if there is a lot of correspondence that comes, then we may defer the public meeting portion to a later meeting if that's what's needed. But I don't foresee that being an issue based on the correspondence and communication that I've received with the associations over the last number of months. So.
Okay, Lana, go ahead.
Just further to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, if we find at the public meeting, if council for whatever reason feels there hasn't been ample time, or we've had people come forward that say, I haven't had the opportunity to speak, we can always extend the commenting period beyond the public meeting as well to take submissions if council's, not comfortable with the timelines as they're set out.
Yep. Okay, Martina, we do have a motion on the floor. We don't have a motion on the floor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have a mover or a seconder.
Okay, if someone would like to put a motion on the floor to approve the concept that Brian has reported on, please. Carl? You're muted, Carl.
I move the recommendation.
And Sheila, you'll second it? All in favor? That motion is approved. Item 9.3 is Internet Telephone Voting System Procurements. It's that time again. Martina, give us a review of that, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report is about our internet and voting system for the 2022 election. The recommendation that's before you is that this report regarding the procurement of the internet telephone voting system for the 2022 election be received for information. Just to give council a little bit of background, as I believe you're aware, I've been working with the other townships and the city in the county on our election process. We did this in 2014 and 2018. We worked together as a collective. And so we're doing it again this time. And so we have, instead of all choosing our own providers, we decided to do a joint RFP to harness our power together and get us a better price. So we did get 3 submissions, one from Dominion Voting Systems, one from VOTAS, and one from Simply Voting. We did review all of the systems, the submissions that we got. Dominion was disqualified because they did not meet the qualifications we had set out. And we did create a scoring matrix that all of the other 2 applicants went through. And from that process, there was a consensus across all the group that we were all going to go with Simply Voting. The city did not participate in our RFP, but they were part of our discussions because they have ample knowledge about election processes and other information to share with us. So Simply Voting came out on top. Their price was slightly higher, but we felt confident in their submission because it met our other criteria, and their pricing was much more transparent than the VOTAS pricing, which provided us a base price, but did not provide us pricing for add-ons that were needed, such as different types of containers to put our tablets in, training information for the public, and a few other items. So we weren't we didn't feel very satisfied, I guess, with their submission. And so we did go with Simply Voting, who was also our provider at the last election. So it was underneath the threshold for our procurement policy. And so Alana and I were able to review this and authorize the purchase.
Good for you. When you say we, Martina, who's we?
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be all of the clerks in the county. So all of us, we work together, and with our deputies, we've had lots of virtual meetings. So we crafted the RFP together. We used the county's bids and tenders site to release it so we could have the widest audience possible. And then we all came back together to do the reviews and make these types of decisions to bring forward to our councils.
Good. Very solid system. Okay, that's great. What is council's decision here? Are we going to support that recommendation? Someone willing to make a motion, please. Heather?
I will move to support the recommendations.
And Sheila, did I see your hand up? Sheila will second it. All in favor? That motion is approved. Thank you very much, Martina. Okay, I'm moving ahead to item 12.1, and this is a letter that we've received from Marie Howren. I'm going to ask our clerk just to give it a very quick review of the letter, and it comes before we discuss our proposed COVID-19 vaccination policy. So in the spirit of fairness, I think we needed to receive and comment, if you like, on the letter before we move ahead. So, Martina, I didn't want to put you on the spot, but could you just give us, and everyone listening, it's also on our website, of course, just give us a brief overview of the letter's content, please.
Absolutely. So through you, Mr. Mayor, this was a letter we received on October 7th from a resident of Douro-Dummer, Marie Howren, in response to discussions that have been had throughout the county and the community regarding mandatory vaccine policies. Ms. Howren had expressed her concern about mandatory vaccine policies. So she wrote this letter, and she also provided additional materials for council's review on this issue. And as the mayor stated, everything is attached to our agenda on our website.
Okay, thank you. Members of council have had access to that letter for a number of days, as has the public. So I would entertain a motion, first of all, to receive that letter. Councillor Watt and Councillor Watson. Is there any discussion from any member of council, please? Carl.
Martina, I'm having trouble receiving this letter because of so many inaccurate information in here. Are we pressed to receive it, or can we just be silent on it?
Through the mayor, council may choose not to receive the letter, and then it would just be listed as an item on our agenda. It would be up to council to make that decision.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Anybody else? Everybody else, you've read the letter? Okay, I would entertain a motion then. Go ahead, Sheila.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask or make a comment about the letter.
Well, we probably should have a motion on the floor before we debate it.
Well, there is a motion.
That, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. There is a motion to receive the letter on the floor.
Okay, go ahead then.
I did read through all the information, and I found a lot of it confusing. I found it conflicted itself in several places, and I don't know. That's just my comment.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. We did have a motion to receive that letter on the floor. Sorry about that. I'm going to call for the vote then, if that's the case. All in favor? That motion is lost. So, Madam Clerk, we just move on.
That is correct.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is the COVID-19 vaccination policy. And I know our staff, especially Alana, has put a huge amount of work into this, not on an island, but it's a very complex and a very serious issue for each and every one of us. Alana, I'll let you review the policy that is before us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. The recommendation is that CAO 2020-40 report dated October 19th, 2021 regarding the COVID-19 vaccination policy be received and adopted into the Township of Douro-Dummer HR policies. Just to give you a little bit of an overview, based on recommendations from the province as well as our local health unit, we were all encouraged to complete a vaccination policy. We definitely have had a lot of discussion. The CAOs have met regularly. We've tried to look at all of the angles and the best way to protect our staff as well as our public. I think there's a variety of policies that have gone forward. They all, I think, stem from a base that's very similar with some provisions that are different from municipality to municipality. So for our purpose here, I have set out the timelines to allow for our staff to be vaccinated. I thought it was important. I know some of the timelines that we've seen, they're very short. You know, they've asked that the vaccination confirmation be provided, and if it's not provided, they're given 30 days to provide it. And in some cases, I'm not sure for those that haven't obtained the vaccination yet that was enough time. So I did want to be fair to those that maybe are apprehensive, those that hadn't been vaccinated yet, to give them ample opportunity to go and be vaccinated, whether it's Pfizer or Moderna. There's a waiting period, so up to another 28 days before they can get the second vaccination, and then another 2 weeks before they're considered fully vaccinated. So we've pushed the timelines out. So essentially we're asking for anybody who currently has their vaccination status complete or obtains it between now and November 15th, that be provided to myself. Beyond that, there's an additional 2 weeks provided. And if we still do not have confirmation, then we will start a testing process. So anybody that is still not vaccinated would have to undergo biweekly testing to ensure that they tested negative, and in addition, continue the screening. Offering up to January 4th for the deadline to provide a fully vaccinated confirmation. Again, I've put in there an additional 30 days, just in the event that, we are working with somebody. I wanted to give enough leeway that we could have that discussion if necessary. I do believe that for those that are apprehensive, there are lots of mixed feelings about the vaccination, and we do want to give them ample opportunity to be comfortable and move forward with that choice. If in the event we are looking at the beginning of February and we still have those that are not vaccinated and who are refusing to get vaccinated, then we would move forward with termination.
Okay, Alana, and thank you for the in-depth research you've had. Open it up to questions, and I will tell you that I'm going to ask for a recorded vote over this policy. I think it's very important that we all dig our heels in and support this. So I will be asking for a recorded vote. Are there any questions or comments? Go ahead, Sheila.
Thank you. Through you, I do have a couple of questions, if I might direct them to Alana. You refer to under item 1.0.1, it refers to all employees, students, contractors, and volunteers. Is council included in that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, council would be included.
Okay, and volunteers would be the committee members of our various committees, boards, and things.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the volunteers, if there's a situation where you continue to meet virtually and those volunteers haven't been vaccinated, we may be able to look at some kind of situation there. But we do have volunteers also that could potentially be coming into the office, volunteer firefighters, that sort of thing. So we have included volunteers as well.
Okay, sorry if I may, I just have on the second page. Being prohibited from entering or using township premises with an asterisk. Is that just any of the township properties? And
through you, Mr. Mayor, essentially, if they're not getting vaccinated, then yes, we would prohibit them from the township facilities, just to ensure that they're not accessing the rec centers and that sort of thing.
Okay, and my last one is 1.0.3 accommodation. Township would provide reasonable accommodation measures to staff who cannot accept vaccination due to verified medical exemption or other reason. Are those other reasons going to be listed, or are they on an individual basis?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, generally that will fall under the Ontario Human Rights Code. So really the only two exceptions are for medical reasons or the Ontario Human Rights Code. So if we have situations there where they are exempt for those purposes, then we will continue to try to make some accommodation to provide the opportunity to continue working.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. We're being very generous with our timelines. Anybody else comment on the matter? Carl, then Heather.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Alana, for the detail in this policy. My question has to do with the another reason to be exempt as recognized by the Ontario Human Rights Code. Last week, the Ontario Human Rights had a policy paper that pretty well says that, temporary rights may be put aside for ensuring individual and collective rights to health and safety. With that in our policy, do you anticipate that we could be faced with detailed requests for that exemption among our staff?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's possible. I think there's been quite a bit of discussion about this as well, and the ability to actually achieve an exemption under the Ontario Human Rights Code. In conversation with SHRP, our HR consultants, they have said it's very difficult to obtain that. We also had some information that was very specific to creed and the definition of creed being, the exemption, but it's very difficult to obtain it based on that. So I would, if we do have a request, I think we would have to forward that to somebody that can really define whether or not that's a valid request as opposed to handling that internally.
Okay, so it would be tested.
Yes.
Thank you.
Heather, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. I appreciate what's before us tonight, and I recognize the importance of having such a policy in place. I'm curious about the point in time when, if they haven't shown proof yet and you're giving them ample time to educate and they're going through biweekly testing during that phase, specific to volunteers. I'm thinking about volunteers again on our committees, may or may not be meeting virtually, library volunteers, program volunteers. How do you see the implementation of that playing out practically, like in practice on a day-to-day basis? And is that something that's even viable?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was lots of discussion about how you provide the accommodation. And one of the things that I think we chatted about from a CAO level was those that have actually already implemented the process and are already doing testing, that it's not something that we want to extend for a long period of time. It's quite onerous. You don't want people doing rapid testing and taking pictures at home. It's something that they would have to come in and have that done. So when we talk about volunteers, I think because we have volunteers in so many different capacities, we would have to look at those on an individual basis. So again, if it's volunteers and their committees and they're, operating from home, then the requirement for testing is going to be less than potentially volunteers that are coming into the office or interacting with the general public. So at that point, we would have to make a determination on the testing and how frequent and whether or not, from a firefighter standpoint, if it's appropriate to do testing, if it's appropriate only at that time to remove from calls and just do training. That would be something that we would have to discuss if we end up in a situation where we don't have vaccinated employees and volunteers.
Okay.
Sorry, Your Worship, just one other question on that. I apologize. So again, playing out the volunteer scenario, and we get to that point of termination, if you will, and they haven't provided proof of vaccination. And this is just picking up on what something Councillor Lansman was saying about them not being permitted within our facilities. That's in capacity as a volunteer, correct? I'm assuming they would still, if they have a child that's going to a hockey game, they wouldn't be banned from the arena as a parent, just in the capacity as a volunteer. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually at this point to access the facilities, you have to be vaccinated, and that's through other legislation. So, but in a situation, anywhere that we're opening our doors for people to come in, whether it's pay taxes or anything like that, of course, as a regular resident, they would not be prohibited any more than anybody else.
So, right, that's the kind of scenario I was thinking. Thank you.
Township of Douro-Dummer are trying to do the right thing. We are following the advice of the professional medical community, and we're trying to protect everyone around us. I'm going to call for a recorded vote to approve the policy. Who would like to make that motion? Carl. Seconded by Sheila. Madam Clerk, a recorded vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Watson, how do you vote? I'm sorry, Councillor Landsman, Dummer Ward Councillor, how do you vote?
Favor?
Councillor Watson, Dummer Ward, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Tom Watt, Councillor at Large, how do you vote?
In favor?
Deputy Mayor Carl Moher, how do you vote?
Yes, in favor.
And Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
Yes, in favor.
That is 5 yeses, 0 noes. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Everyone, let's stay safe. As I said, we are doing our very best to do the responsible and the right thing. Thank you. Committee minutes, other reports. We have item 10.1, capital project status. Alana, did you want to review that? It's been in the package. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just an outline of what staff is currently working on and what you can expect coming forward, some updates on our capital projects. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I did put this question to our assistant rec manager, but he was unable to answer. So just curious about the lime kiln project, which is kind of showing up under the Parks and Recreation. It's showing complete. Is that complete, or is that just complete for the allocated funds this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Watson, that's complete for what was budgeted for this year.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Tom? Oh, sorry. Carl,
Yep.
and then Tom.
Go ahead, Carl. Yep.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alana. I really like this report. It gets me up to speed on various things. A couple things that I wonder if should be on there, and that is some of these days we've got to look at joint building for fire hall and works garage. And I'm wondering if maybe that could be considered to be added to this report. And also maybe at a near future meeting, get the planner, the Green Lawn, I think it is, in to look at, see if we can't modify that building design to make it more affordable, because some of these days we're going to have no choice but to move forward with that. And I have some ideas, and I think other members of council will have some ideas about how we might move forward at a more affordable price. And the second item I wonder should be on there, and that is, I believe there's a proposal for expansion of the Dummer 6-line gravel pit for future gravel from that location. And I'm wondering if that should be in the near future, because next year is election year, and it'd be nice to get those two items kind of well on their way before we might be in a lame duck situation. So we're pushing some issues here that could be substantial cost that we should have at least agreement in principle to move forward. They were my only two comments.
Good. Alana, note to self.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we actually have started with the joint building to look at some costing, and Paul's been working on that as well. We've also been in contact with Tyler to take a look at any modifications that have to be made. We've found some minor areas for cost savings already, which we've asked him to address in taking a look at that building. So we do have plans to come back to council through our budget process to be able to provide some more information. And I'm happy to turn it over to Paul, because I think he might want to talk about the finances.
You're very happy to turn over to Paul. I know that. Paul, go ahead.
Alana kind of said what I was about to say anyways, but we do fully intend to bring this forward as part of the budget, and that is coming up on everyone, but especially me here. It's sneaking up. So, but we are working away on putting together a package, and as part of the budget process, I will be presenting some financing options and what that can look like over the next few years. And just maybe a different way of thinking of how to pay for this building than what's been presented in the past. I think the other piece of this, though, is, you know, even once we get going through the process, even if the building is approved, there's going to be probably a lag until construction can start. So, you know, by the time it gets approved, we put out an RFP, we go through that process, we finalize design and permits and everything. It'll be, you know, I don't want to commit to a time frame of when we expect to break ground, but that will play into the budget discussions because that'll actually impact when money needs to go out the door.
Yep, that's something we got to get on, though. Absolutely. Okay, Carl, a follow-up, and then Tom.
Just to follow up, I wonder, during the budget process, will we have as councillors an opportunity to present some ideas? For example, some of us went on a tour a couple of years ago and looked at roads trucks that were basically sheltered under a shelter outside rather than housed inside. And I know the works manager for Peterborough City of where that has occurred, and they are very happy with that arrangement. There's all kinds of savings by having a shelter that's shelters the truck, but for all intents and purposes, they're outside.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to get their comments about that before we move forward. That's an excellent idea. Tom, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I did also reach out to one of our managers of the arenas and stuff. I've had a fair number of people ask me lately about arenas starting to open now, and and maybe accommodating more and more people all the time. I think it's only 2 at the moment, but things could be opening up even more soon. And people are saying, hey, when can I buy my child a drink and a bag of chips to head out the door? They don't want to linger around. They just want to know if and when our booths are going to open up. And I know that's a bit of a long shot yet, but there was, I was told that maybe there would be just some discussion with the health unit about these things and stuff like that. And I did see Norwood, or Asphodel Norwood, was posting for a canteen person. So I'm just wondering if there is any updates on, has that changed any?
Alana, perhaps you can update us. I'm sure we want to do that as soon as we can.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. We did have a discussion about the canteens on Friday when we had all the parks departments and the health unit on a call. It doesn't appear that any other municipality at this time has opened anything up. We can continue to monitor. Obviously, we cannot do it in Warsaw. We just do not have the space as we're using that space for additional dressing space. But if we are able to do that and move forward in Douro, we could definitely review that. So we'll keep an eye on it and see how things are moving forward.
We want to get back to normal. Of course, everyone does as soon as we can. Okay, that was so long ago now. Madam Clerk, what did we do with that? Just a motion to receive?
For you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We just need a motion to receive, and there's no motion on the floor currently.
And thanks to Paul for bailing Lana out on that last item. That's great. Okay, motion to receive that. Sheila and Tom,
I will
all
make
in
that
favor?
motion.
All in favor? Thank you. That is done. Bylaws. We have one bylaw. Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, bylaw 2021-64 is the bylaw to authorize the reciprocal service agreement with the Township of Havelock Belmont Methuen for chief building official services.
Thank you. Motion, please, for that bylaw. Heather, Carl, all in favor? Motion is approved. That bylaw is now in effect. We move ahead to action items under Correspondence 12.2 from the Municipality of Grey Highlands. The resolution that's before you, that they're asking for support, is about lottery licensing to assist small organizations. What is your decision, Carl?
I wonder if Martina might comment on this. Is this a motion that we should be supporting, or you're dealing with these licenses on a day in, day out basis Is this something we should be supporting or just receiving?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe the resolution that's before you is to open up what qualifies as an organization who can get a lottery license. So currently, there's a large list of requirements that organizations have to meet, including additional requirements around their banking and how they do their finances and audited statements. I believe that this motion is trying to open that up so that small organizations who perhaps don't have the financial support or expertise may be able to get lottery licenses to support them. I'm not against that idea, but I do have concerns about issuing lottery licenses to organizations that may not have the bank accounts or treasury experience to work through that process. Lottery licenses are very complex, and I do acknowledge they can be a burden for the organizations that apply for them. But I do think taking money from the public, then putting it into a lottery scheme and then issuing winnings should be monitored quite carefully. So while I support the idea of opening it up, I also have reservations about how open the scheme may become.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good response. Someone with a motion, please, either support or receive. Carl?
I move to receive.
Seconder to that, please.
I'll second it.
Tom, all in favor? All in favor? There's a problem with connections, I think. Tonight, people are slower than others. There we go. That is approved. A motion, please, for information items. 13.1 is a note from Enbridge Gas about quarterly price comparison chart and the Ministry of Environment regulations under the Conservation Authorities Act. That's simply a motion to receive those, please. Councillor Landsman?
Yes.
And Councillor Watson, all in favor? That motion is approved. We have no accounts. We have no notices of motion that I'm aware of. Any announcements? Community interest? Seeing no hands. We have no closed session. And we have a confirming bylaw. Carl?
There was an announcement.
You're freezing up pretty bad, Carl. It must be your signal. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
You're off and on.
I'll let it go to next meeting. It's not important.
Okay, confirming bylaw, please. Tom? Heather, all in favor? Motion approved, and a motion to adjourn from Heather and Carl, all in favor. Thank you all very much, and everyone, please stay safe. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another meeting here for the Township of Douro-Dummer. Thank you.